When I turned 18, my parents handed me a crumpled $20 bill and said, "Your sister deserves the future, not you." No hesitation, no softening. Just a verdict delivered in the drizzle. My father's voice was hard as iron. My mother's hand felt like ice. The door clicked shut behind me as if the world had decided I wasn't worth keeping. I stood on the porch, soaked to the skin, my suitcase at my feet, the light above me fading. 5 years later, that same light flickered again. But this time, I was the one sitting behind the desk. And my sister was the one asking for an opportunity. But before I explain how the roles reversed, tell me, where are you listening from? I want to know I'm not alone, that someone else has heard the words, "You don't deserve a future." Our home in Bloomington always smelled like lemon cleaner mixed with motor oil. My mother obsessed over appearances. My father obsessed over control. From the outside we seemed ordinary. Inside we had a strict hierarchy. My sister lay on top and me, invisible, folded into the background. Dad, Martin Avery, ran a modest auto shop after leaving teaching. He measured worth in sweat and labor. Mom, Lane, balanced the family accounts as meticulously as she balanced her emotions. No space for mistakes. And Leia? She was their golden child. Beautiful, articulate, a PR major with a dazzling smile. Compliments clung to her like light drawn to the sun. I learned early that my place was the folding chair at the edge of the dining table. Cold metal legs, easy to tuck away. When Leia turned 16, she received a used Honda wrapped with a red ribbon. I got a bookstore gift card. "You love reading, right?" Mom said. "Thank you," I muttered, swallowing the sting. Then came the day the blue university envelope arrived. I held it in trembling hands. Indiana State University had accepted me and offered a scholarship. My heart soared. Maybe they'd finally see me. That evening, I clutched the letter like it was a lifeline. "I got into Indiana State," I whispered. "They gave me a scholarship." Dad didn't look up from his newspaper. "We can't afford 2 tuitions," he said flatly. Mom exhaled sharply, stacking bills on the counter. "Ela's pre-law is already expensive. You need to be realistic." "Realistic?" I echoed, disbelief sharpening my voice. "I've worked for this. I can cover the rest." Dad set the paper down, voice sharp. "Then cover all of it. You're 18, Scarlett. Time to be independent." Leia's phone buzzed. She smiled down at it and murmured, "She's overreacting." That word, a fuse to the years of silence I'd swallowed, ignited something. I finally said what I'd never dared. "You've never even asked what I want." The room fell silent. Mom's hand trembled once before she reached into her purse, pulling out a $20 bill. "Be independent," she said. Dad never looked up again. I packed that night, one suitcase, a few notebooks, my acceptance letter folded in my jacket. Outside, rain was falling. Leia's reflection blurred against the window pane. She didn't wave. And just like that, it began. The door closed, thunder swallowing my name. The first night alone, I discovered how cold metal could feel. The bus stop bench was slick with rain, and the 20 in my pocket was damp. Each passing car splashed me, shrinking me, erasing me bit by bit. I stared at the Indiana State letter, the ink bleeding, still trying to find meaning in it. Streetlights buzzed overhead, shivering. By midnight, I told myself I'd find a way. Any job, any room, any lifeline. But I didn't even have an address to write on forms. By the third night, fever racked me. The air in my lungs felt jagged and sharp. A voice cut through the hum of traffic. "Hey, you okay?" A man, maybe in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes, stood there. His name was David Reed, a long-haul truck driver. He gave me his jacket, called for help, stayed until the ambulance arrived. The hospital was bright, sterile. A nurse clipped a tag on my wrist. Name, Scarlett Avery. Address, unknown. That word hit harder than pneumonia. When I woke, a styrofoam cup of orange juice rested on the tray. A $20 bill tucked neatly beneath it. The nurse said the man had left it, whispering, "You'll need it more than he does." 2 days later, still weak, I was discharged with a pamphlet for Haven House Shelter. It sat between a laundromat and a peeling pawn shop sign, but inside warmth awaited. Ruth Nolan, who ran it, looked at me the way no one had in years, straight in the eyes. "You get one bed, one lock, one chance to rebuild. That's all we ask," she said. I cleaned floors, folded sheets, scrubbed bathrooms until my hands cracked from bleach. But for the first time, labor felt like proof that I existed. The other women called me quiet, invisible. I kept my head down, saved vouchers, collected job flyers. One afternoon, Ruth pinned a new notice to the board. A help wanted sign caught my eye. Alvarez's Diner, 5th and Pine. It was the sort of note most people ignored, scrawled in uneven handwriting on cheap paper. But I lingered. Something about it whispered, this could be the beginning. The next morning I walked through the diner doors wearing shoes I'd borrowed. The aroma of coffee and burnt toast hung thick in the air. This place didn't try to be fancy, and neither did the owner. Elena Alvarez stood behind the counter, sleeves rolled, hair loose and unkempt. She glanced at me, noticed the thrifted coat, the hospital bracelet still clinging to my wrist. "You ever worked a floor?" she asked. "No," I admitted. "But I learned fast." She tossed me an apron. "Start with syrup bottles. If you last a week, I'll pay you." That night, as rain tapped against the windows and I wiped down the counters, I realized silence didn't always signal defeat. Sometimes it was simply the sound of building something new. Days at Alvarez's Diner blurred together. Mornings carried the scent of sizzling bacon. Nights echoed with the hiss of coffee machines. My muscles ached, my feet blistered. Yet this exhaustion felt different, earned. Elena Alvarez was sparing with words. She corrected mistakes without raising her gaze. "Missed a spot," she'd say. Customers noticed the little things. Her voice was gruff, but her eyes offered respect, growing as I stopped making excuses and started solving problems before she pointed them out. I began observing everything. Who came in when, which orders piled up, which supplies ran low. Chaos had structure if you watched long enough. By the second week I started organizing. Salt shakers by section, condiments sorted by delivery date, invoices stacked by supplier. Every note went into a battered notebook tucked into my apron. One morning a delivery truck arrived late. Ben Carter, the driver, jumped out humming, "Sorry, traffic." Together we moved crates inside, arranging perishables efficiently. He paused, studied me, then smiled. "You always do it like that. Makes things easier to find. You've got a head for systems," he added. For the first time a compliment felt earned, not handed out. That night I stayed behind, sketching a more efficient delivery plan on napkins, arrows, circles, timelines connecting suppliers. The next morning, Elena studied it quietly, then slid it into her apron. "Keep thinking like this. Chaos rules the world. People like you make it work." Weeks became months. The diner transformed into a classroom of logistics. I tracked supplies, mapped routes, calculated hours on a relic computer from the shelter. When Ben's truck broke down, I rearranged deliveries over the phone. Everything arrived on time. He called me a human GPS. I laughed, but inside something shifted. Maybe I wasn't just piecing my life back together. I was designing it. When Everline Freight posted a clerk position, Ben brought me the flyer. "Try. You'd be perfect." "They won't hire someone without a degree," I said. "Try anyway," he insisted. I printed a 2-page resume that smelled faintly of diner coffee. The manager, Tom Whitaker, asked practical questions. Organization, communication, problem solving. I answered honestly with no embellishments. He leaned back, studying me. "No degree but instinct. That's workable." That line changed everything. At Everline I learned control, how systems, data and logistics could be read, understood and improved. Within a year I was the one redesigning those systems, spotting inefficiencies no one else saw. I didn't need a table in a diner anymore. I was building networks. 5 years later, Emerge Operations Group stood tall. What began as a borrowed desk and a second-hand laptop above a print shop had grown into a company that helped small businesses run like giants. Fair pay, efficient systems, no wasted potential. I kept reminders framed in my office. The hospital wristband marking anonymity, the crumpled $20 my mother pressed into my hand, relics of what it meant to be overlooked. One morning Maya, my HR manager, appeared with her tablet. New candidate for operations coordinator. Name's Leah Avery. My stomach tightened. That name so familiar yet distant. I didn't look up. Schedule her for Tuesday. Tuesday came with steady rain, drumming softly against the windows. I arrived early, straightened papers, and stared at the framed $20. At 9 a.m. Maya knocked, announcing Leia's arrival. The click of her heels carried a rhythm I once envied in high school hallways, a rhythm that had commanded my parents' attention. When the door opened, Leia stepped in, composed, elegant, hair pinned like my mother once did for recitals. She smiled politely. "Good morning." "Morning," I replied. "Please have a seat." To her, I was just another professional. A ghost wearing success as armor, unrecognizable yet unstoppable. And this time I held all the power. Her name landed in the room like a spark. Miss Scarlett Avery, founder and CEO. Leia's fingers twitched slightly as she clutched her folder, trying to steady herself. "Avery," she murmured, almost to herself, as if testing the weight of the name. I nodded toward the chair. "Let's begin." Her resume looked impressive, at least on paper. She spoke of project management, team leadership, conflict resolution, words rehearsed to perfection, masks she'd likely worn for years. I listened, letting the silence between her sentences stretch, until I saw her shift uncomfortably. "Tell me about a time you handled conflict," I asked finally. She hesitated. "At my last company, there was a dispute among staff. I had to enforce fairness, make sure everyone got what they deserved." I leaned forward, elbows resting on the desk. "Fairness," I repeated, calm but deliberate. "What does that mean to you?" Her eyes flickered, the first trace of uncertainty. "It means giving everyone the same chance." "Everyone?" "Yes," I said slowly, letting the word hang in the air. "Everyone." Her gaze drifted to the wall behind me. The framed wristband. The $20 bill. The memory suspended under glass. I watched as recognition flickered in her eyes. Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. "Scarlett," she whispered, my name trembling on her lips. It sounded both alien and familiar. I leaned back. "We're here to discuss your qualifications," I said evenly. She struggled for words, trembling as she closed the folder. I didn't know. I thought you didn't survive." I shook my head. "This isn't about the past, Ms. Avery. This is a professional setting." Her throat worked as she tried to regain composure. "You've done well," she said finally. "So have you," I replied quietly. "You've learned to sound sincere." The rain whispered against the glass, filling the silence. I raised a hand before she could speak. "I'm not angry," I said. Anger had been a luxury I could no longer afford. I had built instead of burned. Her tears fell then, fast and quiet. "Mom and Dad, they miss you. They regret everything," she admitted. I studied her, remembering every layer of the old hierarchy. The ribboned car, my folding chair, her applause, my silence. "They made their choices," I said finally. "And so did you." "I didn't stop them." "I should have," Leia whispered. "You didn't have to," I replied. "That's the thing about silence. Its complicity masquerades as comfort." She nodded slowly, the weight of years pressing down. "Are you going to hire me?" I looked at her resume, then back into her eyes. "That depends. Can you follow leadership that values fairness over favoritism?" "I can try," she said quietly. "Good," I said. "Because that's the only thing we build here. Fairness." When she left, Maya lingered in the doorway, hesitant. "So, you really believe everyone deserves a chance?" I murmured, watching the rain streak the window like silver veins. "Even the ones who once denied you theirs." That evening, after the office emptied, I stood by the window, watching the city blur in the rain. Somewhere out there, my sister was driving home, replaying every word, maybe realizing that forgiveness didn't always sound like mercy. Sometimes it sounded like boundaries. I touched the framed $20 bill on the wall, flattened, fragile, and luminous under the office light. They had slammed doors on me. I had built one that stayed open. The phone buzzed. Mom calling. I let it ring twice, then silenced it. The hum of rain and distant city noise replaced it. And for the first time in years, silence felt like peace, not absence. The next morning, sunlight turned rain-streaked glass into a golden shimmer. The city seemed to breathe out. Leia arrived early, notebook in hand, nervous but present. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she said softly. I nodded. "Earn it," I replied, not unkindly. She smiled, a small tentative smile, like someone relearning a language they had once known. I watched her work, Careful, deliberate, finding her footing. Somewhere inside me something released. Not forgiveness exactly. Release. Later, in the quiet of my office, I looked at the 3 objects that had built my life. The hospital wristband, the $20 bill, and the company logo framed between them. Once symbols of failure, pity, and survival. Now legacy. I picked up the $20 bill, my reflection merging with it. Unknown address was no longer who I was. I had roots, purpose, a company. I placed it back, turned off the lights, and whispered to the silence. The debt's been paid in full. That weekend, I returned to Bloomington for the first time in 5 years. The town looked smaller, the roads narrower, but the old bus stop remained. Same dented bench. Same flickering light. I placed a small bouquet and the framed $20 bill on the seat. This is where they ended me, I whispered. And where I began. The air smelled of wet pavement and second chances. I didn't wait for anyone. I listened to the rain, no longer cruel but cleansing. Dawn broke in pale gold over the street. Because everyone deserves a future, even those once told they didn't. If this story finds you, share it. Tell me where you're listening from. You're not alone.